Welcome everyone to our next in our Engaged Buddhist Speakers Series here at Deer Park. We're very honored today to welcome Kaira Jewel Lingo to the session. So we've been monastics together for quite a long time, and then Kaira Jewel has gone on a path. You might say the unconditioned into lay life, and also continuing a spiritual path as a teacher. And so she's a Dhamma teacher with a lifelong interest in spirituality and social justice. Her work continues the engaged Buddhism developed by Thich Nhat Hanh, and she draws inspiration from her parents' lives of service and her father's work with Martin Luther King Jr. After living as an ordained nun for 15 years in Thich Nhat Hanh's monastic community, Kaira Jewel now teaches internationally in the Zen lineage and the Vipassana tradition, as well as in secular mindfulness at the intersection of racial, climate, and social justice, with a focus on activists, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, artists, educators, families, and youth. Based in New York, she offers spiritual mentoring in groups and is author of We Were Made for These Times, 10 Lessons in Moving Through Change, Loss, and Disruption, and the editor of Planting Seeds, Practicing Mindfulness with Children, both from Parallax Press. And the latest, I think it's the latest, right? This is together with Valerie Brown and Marcela Gomez, Healing Our Way Home, a collaboration. So we welcome Kaira Jewel. And so we were just talking about the format for this, and so we invite Sister Kaira Jewel to offer a guided meditation to begin, and then we'll go from there and maybe have some interaction, some questions, and so I pass it on to Kaira Jewel. Oh.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, dear brother Saplu, brother Stream, it's so lovely to be with you and to be with everyone on this call. And just very inspired by this speaker series. When I look back at the interviews and the presentations, workshops you've been having already, I'm really eager to listen to all those beautiful teachers and change makers. So thank you for doing this, brother. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's so many good memories of our time together at Deer Park. Mm-hmm. Getting into good trouble.
Yeah.
Trying to really help the Dharma be engaged. So it's beautiful to see this offering. And just appreciating looking at all of your faces, everyone who's on the call. Thank you for being here. So we are focusing on how we might stay grounded, stay present in divisive times. We're just a few weeks away now from the election in the US. There may be folks here from other parts of the world as well. And there's a lot of upheaval a little bit everywhere. So whether it's elections or something else, maybe this topic is relevant to us all. So shall I start with the meditation, brother, and then we'll kind of let the conversation unfold from there?
Yeah, I think it's a nice way to keep everyone grounded. back in our
Yes.
bodies.
Yes. Great. Okay. So I would love to invite us into a meditation where we, after we ground a little bit, or we call on ancestors who can be of support to us in this time of great change and disruption. So that's will be the focus of the meditation. So finding whatever position is most supportive for you for maybe 15, 20 minutes. It might be seated, but if you're tired or your body is not happy in a seated position, feel free to lie down or feel free to stand if that feels more supportive for you. So I'll offer 3 sounds of the bell to begin. And as we listen to the bell, just letting the sound help our minds to settle on just this one thing. So many things our mind might be wanting to consider and think about and process. Let's let this sound be the focus as we feel our breath flowing in, flowing out during the whole time that we hear the bell. Letting ourselves maybe take deeper breaths than we've been taking most of this day. Maybe one more really deep breath down into the abdomen. Letting the abdomen grow, letting the lungs fill, and then releasing all of that breath from the abdomen, from the lungs. And letting your breath find its natural rhythm. Noticing the way the breath happens naturally, all by itself. Just letting the breath flow in, letting the breath flow out. No need to make anything happen. Letting the breath be just as it is. Letting the body be just as it is. With each exhale, letting the body release its weight onto the support of whatever is holding you. Whatever you're seated or standing or lying on. Letting go into that support with each exhale. Letting the mind move through the body, sort of gently scanning for places of tightness or holding or tension, and releasing those with the out breath if that's available. Softening through the face, around the eyes, releasing the muscles of the jaw. Releasing the shoulders, the arms, the hands. Just letting your attention flow throughout the rest of the body. Anywhere you find some tightness or tension or tiredness, you could take a deep inhale into that part of the body and sigh with the exhale, releasing, letting go to whatever extent is possible. Feeling the whole body, allowing the whole body to release, to calm, to let go. Now I invite you to see yourself as a tree. Some tree that you like, that inspires you. Maybe a big oak tree or a very tall pine tree. Maybe a fruit tree in blossom. yourself as a beautiful tree with many branches, lots of leaves, or pine needles. Strong, vital, providing a home to a number of beings in your branches, maybe in your bark, in your trunk, in your roots. Taking in the light and warmth of the sun, photosynthesizing that light to create food to nourish all the cells of your being. The sap flows from the outermost branches and leaves down through the trunk, down into the roots that go as far down into the earth as your branches reach up and out. It's like a mirror image, the roots under the earth, intertwined with each other and even connecting with the roots of other trees that may be near you. The roots have big branch-like parts and then twig-like parts that separate out from the bigger roots, just like above the branches and twigs and the leaves. There's a whole lot happening beneath the earth that you don't see, but it is all essential to keep the tree healthy and alive. The roots pull in the moisture, the water from the ground, the nutrients. Mycelial fungal networks that connect it with the other trees. So much intelligence in the roots. As you breathe and feel your body, feel yourself connected to these roots beneath the soil. Tasting the soil, drinking the water through your roots. And as you let yourself be nourished by your roots in the soil, deep, deep down in the earth, reflect on your family line, the ancestors of your family lineage. As a kind of root for your tree. What are the strengths of your family lineage? You may be calling on your biological ancestors, but you also may be calling on your adopted family line. What are the strengths of these people who raised you and the people who raised them, whether they are related by blood or not? What wisdom do these ancestors have that is nourishing you now? What experiences do they have with times of volatility that they surely lived through that you can draw on now? Because it's in you. All of their wisdom is in you. Just as the roots are in a tree. See what wisdom, what support, maybe through images or words or colors or memories or physical sensations. What arises as you invite your family line to speak to you, to instruct you, to inspire you? To recollect their wisdom and strength to support you in this time. Open yourself to receive whatever is coming through. And our ancestors don't need to be perfect for us to call upon their wholesome qualities. We also know they had their suffering, their difficulties. And maybe that's part of their gift to us, is also the wisdom of what not to do when things are volatile and disrupted. So we can hold their shortcomings, their suffering with compassion as we stay open to their strength and wisdom and power. Drinking through the roots of the tree, letting that nourishment travel all the way up through our legs and spine to our arms and inner organs and brain, just as a tree would bring in nourishment from its roots. Let the wisdom of the ancestors support your whole body and mind. giving you strength, giving you courage, giving you creativity, inspiration, relaxation, patience. Receptivity. Now we can call upon either a spiritual ancestor or a land ancestor, or perhaps a group of those who have built up the land that you call home, your country, or those who have passed on the spiritual tradition which has nourished you, nourished your family, nourished your community. The line of people who have made our lives possible, our society, our culture, our language, our government, our schools, roads, hospitals, our system of justice. These are the various land ancestors. And then there are the spiritual ancestors, those people who started our spiritual lineage and all those who continued it after. And we may belong to multiple lineages, so there may be several streams that flow together. Touching into one of these streams of ancestors, wherever you find strength or inspiration or some resonance. Is there a particular person, a particular group of ancestors that you want to connect with from your land, from your spiritual tradition, who have strength and wisdom that can support you now in all the challenges that we face in our world right now? Which ancestors are coming to you, or which ones do you call upon now? Respectfully invite them to be with you, to be with us, just like you connect with the roots beneath the soil. These ancestors are always present for us, always ready to offer their support, their strength, their insight to us. Feel the tingle of the roots down in the soil, the aliveness of these ancestors wanting to talk to us, wanting to be present for us, just waiting for us to turn towards them, open our hearts to them. Let them talk to you. Let them be with you. Breathe with them. Release tension with them. What wisdom, what message, what offering do they have for you in this moment, in this time? In what way did they live their lives that can be instructive for you now? Come back to the feeling of being this lush and vibrant tree, well rooted, well connected to the earth, to all the trees in your lineage that have come before through your root system. Because you're so deeply connected to your roots, when a strong wind comes or a violent storm, your roots are what keep you stable, anchored in the earth. As we bring our practice to a close, just offering gratitude to your ancestors, of your various lineages in your family, land, spiritual lines. Taking a moment to offer appreciation for them being your roots, for whatever communication was possible today with them. Whatever opening may have happened. Take a few breaths with your ancestors as we bring our practice to a close.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kaira Jewel. It's very deep, very yeah, heartfelt.
Mm.
So maybe we can go into the next session,
Sure.
and let's kind of prepare the soil of our mind for learning more about your path. And you write about it in your book, um, and recently I came on one of the meditations you put on the Plum Village app, where you talked about something I hadn't heard before, which was about that time when you were in Germany and some difficulty came up. You went to visit with Thai. I wonder if you just want to start a little bit about your path, and um, you offered so much to the Plum Village community and continue to, um, and then have gone off and been teaching as a kind of solo, not solo career, but kind of on your own.
Yeah.
So maybe share about that if you can.
Sure. Sure. Sort of the art, like a bit of my spiritual journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
My path. Sure. Um, well, I always have to start with the family of origin, because I feel like that was a pretty direct link to ordaining as a nun. Because my parents were part of a family religious order, which was formed around a monastic model, a Christian monastic model, but it was for lay people with, families, couples with children. And very simple living. The idea was to renew the church and to work with the poor, to come into places that were open to us. There would be a town meeting discussion on what most needed to happen by everyone in the community. It might be a slum, it might be a rural community, it might be a Native American reservation. In the 80s or in the 70s, there was a human development project in every time zone in the world. So the adults would come into a place, have a town hall meeting over several days, come up with a plan, and then whether it was a school or a bridge or an irrigation project or a women's cooperative, that project would happen and the people of that community would build it. So the community I lived in that did this work was thousands of people, and all over the world in different houses, but we had a kind of monastic schedule. So we'd wake up at 5 in the morning and have a prayer service, and there would be a bell, just like in a monastery. And we'd come down as a kid, we would do this, come down and have chants and prayers, and then we'd go off to school. But all the kids would eat together. The parents of, adults would be doing their thing, and there would be a few adults looking after us, kind of like a kibbutz. So one night a week we had dinner with our parents, with our family. The rest of the time we were in this collective child care. So we went off to school, and so part of that time, so I was born into this community and lived in this community till I was 14. And for 4 years, I lived in Nairobi, Kenya also.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was just a very kind of powerful imprinting about communal living, about a spiritual foundation to life, and to just seeing all the adults around me engaged in a life of service. Nobody was making any money. Everything was held in common. The cars were held in common. We got hand-me-down clothes, and everyone just got a stipend. Anyway, so I just very early kind of didn't have as a goal to be, the American dream. That wasn't it. It was countercultural to that. It was, uh, yeah. see all people, all beings as your relatives, and do what you can to support everyone being better off. So I felt very lost when we left that community. The community sort of dissolved for financial reasons. This is the 80s, the Reagan era. Donations started to dry up. Anyway, and I just remembered when I was in high school at the time, it was the first time I lived in a nuclear family setting, and I remember coming home from high school one day, walking home and just looking around and like thinking, this can't be it. This can't be all there is. It's just this kind of everyone just trying to, take care of their families and make it financially. So this was a really deep question of like, how do we live? How do we do this life in a way that really makes sense? So I searched out the most communal living situations on my college campus, and then started doing yoga and meditation in college. And then a friend told me about Plum Village, and I was really, by the end of college, thinking I really need a spiritual path. I loved my academic training, but I thought this isn't. I don't know how to be happy. I don't know how to transform my suffering. So I decided to look for a spiritual teacher in a community, and went to India for 3 months, and then came to Plum Village for the summer retreat. I was 23. And as soon as I saw Thai, I knew he was my teacher. And the community was also very powerful, like really practicing his teachings. I felt very moved. So that first summer retreat just changed my life, and I decided to cancel the rest of my trip around Europe and stay in Plum Village for the next 4 months. And at the end of that time, I really thought, if this is so powerful for me, why don't I do it all the time? So I thought I wanted to be a nun. And I went home for a year, came back and ordained when I was 25. And yeah, I was in the community for 15 years, 5 years in Plum Village, 5 years in Deer Park, 5 years in Germany, with some back and forth in between, but it added up to that. And at a certain point, about 13 years into monastic life, I really felt called to I didn't ever want to leave the community, but I felt called to do something else that I wasn't sure exactly what that was. But I really wanted to stay a nun and stay in the community because I deeply loved the community in Thai, and just the path was so inspiring to me. But something wasn't the same as it had been for those 13 years. And I thought, I can't figure this out in the monastery. I have to leave in order to see this clearly. And so that was that story you were speaking to when I went to talk to Thai, because I just thought I could tell that story later, but basically I did leave to just hold the question. So I took another 2 years in robes, but out of the monastery, to just, what do I need to do? Is this real? Do I, can I go back, or is this something that I really need to just do outside of the monastery? And I didn't want to rush that decision, or but it unfolded in time, and that it was my path to continue in the lay world. And so I disrobed after 15 years, and then began to teach in the lay sanghas and communities and colleges, and working in secular mindfulness, sharing mindfulness with teachers, and started a group that I led every week when I lived in DC for about almost 3 years. I had a little sangha every Monday night, but I would travel and lead retreats. And then, yeah, I lived in Sri Lanka for 2 years, teaching mostly online. And I moved to New York about 4 years ago, met my husband. We got married 2 years ago. So now he and I are bringing our traditions together. He's an Episcopal priest, and so we're bringing Buddhist Christian kind of path into formation. And our real vision for our future is to, we were offered a monastery in upstate New York, a 22-acre monastery near Poughkeepsie. So we want to start the beloved community of engaged spirituality. So very close to what this series is exploring here, but bringing Buddhist and Christian streams together to support deep contemplative practice and engagement in the world. So I hope that's a somewhat of a line.
Let me come up here, I think, so people can see when I'm asking the
Yes,
question.
yes.
Yeah. So thank you. That's wonderful. And yeah, I shared a bit at the beginning. I am very grateful for your contribution to my path, because as a fellow, yeah, kind of just same generation. And when I showed up in Plum Village, I felt like I really had a sister who is kind of had forged the way forward. Somebody very compassionate and kind and inclusive. And I remember actually learning the basics of Dhamma sharing from you, 2004, when the whole Sangha was here at Deer Park. I was in your Dhamma sharing group, and some of the things you said then, I continue to use today. So yeah, there's a lot of gratitude for you and your path. And
thank you.
Yeah. So I don't know if you noticed, there's an election going on. And I always remember one thing you always encouraged all of us when we were in Plum Village to make sure we registered to vote. You were the one who kind of get the vote out in Plum Village. What are your words for reflection? I'm sure you've been saying many things about what's going on now, and
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for just inviting us to move into this kind of reflection, because I notice for me it's a lot of ups and downs, right? As we read the news, as we talk to our friends, there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of hope, there's trying to see the future, and then, oh, what if this happens? Oh, like a lot of turmoil as we try to it's just such a human thing to try to figure out what's happening so we can be ready, or what to do. And it is important to kind of I think be prepared for all different scenarios. And this image of the tree getting rooted, I feel is so relevant at a time when there's a lot of winds blowing back and forth, and it can feel very destabilizing, right? First of all, to not know what's going to happen, and also the very real possibility of I think uh, there's some real, well, you could use the word evil, afoot. And it's not to say this binary, like one party's good, the other party's wholly bad, or not even parties here, but like movements within parties, I mean, there really is some very powerful energies of destructiveness, pulling things apart. And I'm not really talking about, I understand there's such complexities, and many people, may feel it's not so easy to know who they want to vote for, or what, given the options. And I think there's, whatever the nuances and the hesitations or the frustrations we may feel, there really is a possibility of this country changing drastically, like really drastically, come, this election. And so, so I think it's important, as much as we want to stay grounded and stay open to the humanity and the gifts of all the people in this country, right? We know that this election is very close, and last election was very close, and the election before that, like half of our country feels very different from, about the other half. And there's a lot of, gray area in there, but like we have to figure out how to live together.
Yeah.
And yet there are these really complex and very, potentially very dangerous. We've already seen some of what can happen in terms of danger to our institutions. But so in terms of practicing with that, I think part of the practice is to see it clearly, to not turn away from how very important this moment is. And we still do have time leading up to the election, and we still can do things with our time and energy to bring about, the kind of participation maybe that we hope to see, like encouraging people to get out the vote. And I just put a few days ago a bunch of postcards in the mail that were encouraging people in California to vote, that an organization sent me. But I'm planning to contact, young members of my family that are just now able to vote in this election, and make sure that, encourage them to vote. Anyway, there's time, not a lot of time, but we still can do things. But I think we really do need to talk about how do we be ready for whatever's coming, which may be what we want, it may be what we don't want. And even if the candidate of our choice wins, it doesn't mean the work is over then either. Like there's still a lot of, a lot of practice and kind of, effort, I think, that needs to be made to help whoever that is to also move, more towards what is best for all. So yeah, I think there's it's important to be having this conversation, I think, because I think we actually really need to think about all scenarios here, because
Mm,
it's, we just can't know what's going to happen. So how do
mm,
we start to feel into how will we be connecting with others so that we can have community, have a support system, have a way to um, be responsive to the needs of our community, to the needs of others, should things, go into that danger territory.
mm,
And if they don't, great. We still need to be in those communities and looking at how to be of support to each other, how to nurture our communities, nurture ourselves. Um, but without kind of doomsday thinking,
mm,
I mean, there will be some very, some people who will be immediately very vulnerable
mm,
come the decision, if you know if
mm,
somebody wins,
mm,
one of the candidates wins, it's going to put a lot of people in immediate jeopardy. So what do we do? How do we be responsive,
mm,
right?
mhm.
um,
I remember that Thai said in 2008 that it's not enough that uh, Obama is elected. He needs a sangha. And so I wonder what can we do in our daily life, in our spiritual life, and our connections with others. And like you say, it's not just about an election; it's about how we live in every moment and create solid spiritual communities.
mm,
Deep relationships, which are, because the way I see it is that neighborhood you describe walking through in high school is become the default mode now for most of the
yeah,
country, and people are
yeah.
living isolated in their own
Mhm,
houses and their own
mhm,
cars and their own careers, and that has created a lot of the destabilization. So how do we come together in places like this new monastery you have, or
mhm,
here at Deer Park? I mean, that
mhm.
Thai's vision for strong communities.
Yeah,
How do we do
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, this platform you're creating is one of the
Yeah,
ways. Thank you for doing this.
yeah.
Um, but I remember after uh, I think it was 2016, Michael Moore encouraged folks to get into, to have 5 other people you could call when
Mm,
anything was going down that needed, a response.
mm,
So thinking about maybe, are there some friends that you can talk to about being like a pod that is ready to kind of, whether it's take action, make phone calls, um, write letters, or even just brainstorm. Maybe it's a listening session where you really get informed about something that you care about together, and just as a sangha, as a group of people, meditate, look deeply together on how you can be responsive to that situation. That's
mm.
one possibility. I just need to plug in my computer, 1 second. And I think about this election as, it's so present moment, it's so important, and it's now, but it's also like a metaphor of like climate catastrophe and, um,
Mm,
all of the extreme weather events. Like we're facing all of this. Like
mm,
all of these things need the same kind of attention in terms of we are just entering a time more and more where things are destabilized. Whoever wins the election, we're going to still have that issue very much front and center, right?
mhm,
Where more and more climate refugees, more and more
mm,
people whose lives are upended by lack of water, extreme heat, fires, floods. So this both finding inner practices that can support us, but really I think more and more it's being able to be connected to other people that I
Mm.
think is really like the key to survival. I mean, really survival. Like both through this election period of turbulence, but also just ongoingly. It is one of the reasons why we want to live in this center so that we have a way to ground daily, like that's much more of the focus of our lives, is to be deeply grounded in spiritual practice,
Mm.
but also where we're connected to the land, we're growing food, we're um, bringing other people into connection to the earth, but that we're building this, community where we take care of each other, and where there is um, that we're actually seeding the kind of future that is viable, right? A
Mm.
simple living, very intentional, ecological way of being with the earth in terms of the building, the architecture, right? Like solar and
Mm.
um, using as little energy as possible in terms of how you build. So anyway, like us living in a way that is in integrity with what we know to be our interconnection with the world, and
Mm.
also offering that possibility of touching that to people who come and practice. So um, I think one of the things we can also see as a practice for these times is also like living more simply ourselves.
Mm.
Like how can we but really put into practice now whatever it is that's going to help the whole of humanity, the whole of our planet,
Mm.
like make this work. It means we need to, consume less.
Mm.
That's not always so easy. I mean, you did wonderful work with the Earth Peace Treaty, I remember, and our
Mm.
car-free days when I was a
Uh,
nun. But but when you live in community, you can live more simply. Or when you are on the land, when you're in, when you make certain choices. I'm not saying everyone has to move into the countryside. I'm just saying, like, what can each of us do to move that along in our own daily lives? And I think a lot of it has to do with how we consume. We are the, greediest country on earth in terms of using so many of the resources of the planet, making so much of the pollution that other people really suffer from in other parts of the world through no fault of their own. So I think, like, seeing not only the need to build community, to
mm.
um, have people we can take action with and take refuge in, but also how can we make lifestyle decisions um, that we really can believe in,
Mm.
because they are actually um, what will support this shift. And many people are doing this, right? Many people are putting solar panels up, driving, more, less polluting cars, you
Mm.
know, eating lower on the food chain. All these things make a huge difference.
Mm.
Um, and getting together with others so that those things become reinforced. All of that is really, really important.
Mm.
Mhm.
What you said about consuming, greediest country on the earth, and yeah, I often come back to this, growing up in America, that these two kind of traumas that we have not really put our energy into healing, the enslavement of African peoples and the eradication of indigenous peoples on this land, that and because we haven't healed, we haven't reconciled, then it manifests in like this election and this polarization. All of these things are kind of knock on effects of that. And then I can see when those, and then the healing doesn't happen quickly. It's a slow, I mean, destruction can happen very quickly, but healing takes a long time and it takes concerted effort. And so it is easiest in the moment just to eat, just to consume, right? Because, well, it takes so long to heal. And so how can we develop the patience to, as a collective body, starting at ourselves, but as a collective, to be able to bring about that healing process, to contribute to it. I mean, I think of the ceremonies I did in 2007 in Vietnam, and what kind of ceremony can we do? I mean, it's not one ceremony, but it's how can we? This is a big question. This is my really deep question.
Yeah.
I think many of us have it in some way, shape, or form, is how to bring about that healing.
Yeah.
Because we, at the same time, we all love this land. We love this, and those of us who have ancestors who colonized this land, those of us who have ancestors who are indigenous, those of us who have both, those of us who were brought to work to build up this country, right? So how do we? It's a
Yeah,
big
such
question.
a deep question. Yeah, it's such an important question. I also, after that trip to Vietnam, I also really, a lot happened for me in those healing ceremonies in Vietnam that took me exactly back to slavery, genocide of Native peoples, witch hunts of women in the US. That's what so for those of you who might not have been there or know, Thich Nhat Hanh organized three mass mass requiem ceremonies, 3 days long each, one in Hanoi, one in Hue, one in Saigon and Ho Chi Minh City. And about 10,000 people came to each of these ceremonies. It was the first time that Vietnamese people had a chance to mourn their dead that they had lost in the war. They were able to share the names of the people they had lost and where they died and how they died. And there were reams of paper stapled to the altars with all of their names and where they died, how they died. It was the first public acknowledgement and a chance to really express grief. And there was a tantric master that, along with Thai, held these ceremonies, and his students were chanting. We were joining the chants. We would just go into the Buddha hall and chant all night long. Like, we would be there, they would be chanting, but we would just be sending energy, just holding this space. And all these kind of very profound things happen that are kind of unexplainable, like some supernatural things where it was somehow clear from, I didn't see these myself, but I heard them, that the spirits or the energies of these people were really, something was happening for all of us. So one story was in one of the temples, there was a flagpole with the Buddhist flag at the top of the temple, and it just bent over. Do you remember that? Did you hear that story? Someone said they saw the flagpole just bent over, like it didn't, there was no reason, no logical explanation. Anyway, getting a little bit off
topic. It was very powerful. It was
just to say a lot of things were happening for people. One of the things that Thai was saying to people who were following along from home, because people would come to the temple, but they were also practicing at home. The teaching from Thai was for everyone to practice the 5 mindfulness trainings for these 3 days at least, and speak lovingly to people in your family, like live in a wholesome way during these 3 days to make this healing of the collective possible.
Mhm.
So I think that's another thing we can take from that experience in this election time and any time of strife and difficulty, is to really think about how we can like purify, like eat in a way that is purifying, speak in a way that's purifying, act with our body, with our speech, with our thoughts in ways that are purifying, so that we can be as prepared and ready as we can be to serve and to be channels for the healing to come through. Okay, but I was saying how when I was in these, sessions of chanting, I remember going into like a very deep place of feeling connected to the ancestors of the Americas, and really recognizing how what we were doing there in those ceremonies to address the suffering of the war felt very connected to me. Like all the suffering of what you just said, slavery, native genocide, witch hunts, that just came up as like, oh yeah, this can be healed here too.
Mm.
There's so much, spiritual energy collecting that it evoked that in me
Mm.
of what do I carry, right? Like you said, we all carry this trauma in us from that history, that it just naturally arose. And I just found myself saying prayers for all of the victims of all of those Holocausts, right? And what that made me think of was, how could we do things like those mass requiem, those requiem masses in the US? And I know there's like a Japanese Buddhist group that has done pilgrimages to all the places on the coast where slave ships were brought and where like slave markets were, and or even to trees where lynchings happened, and there's rituals they've done there, there's prayers, there's, I mean, the beautiful museum in Montgomery, that honors those who've been lynched throughout the country, over 3,600 lynchings. There's a monument with the name of each of those people and the dates when they were lynched. So I think there are ways to massage those knots in the collective consciousness through ceremony. And I've often thought, gosh, it would be lovely to think about how to do that kind of ceremony here, to whether it's, the Trail of Tears, or, you know,
It's funny that you think I've had it coming up for years now. I've been trying to tell everybody because
yeah.
it took so many years to sit in my store consciousness. What was going on there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, it was not so immediate. I was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like, wow, this is so
Yeah.
impactful.
Yeah.
But in the years since then, I've really reflected, and it's the same thing. What kind of
Yeah.
I think if enough of us have it in our store consciousness, something will
Yeah.
manifest.
Yeah.
Figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I think it's extremely important. I think, you know, what you said earlier was so true, that we haven't healed those wounds. And so we keep repeating them. Like
Yeah,
this
it's like
election, what you
you get
said.
the scab,
Exactly. It doesn't get metabolized,
yeah.
right? The grief stays uh, as a wound, and it just becomes food for more oppression and abuse and violence and unconsciousness.
Mm,
And I think um, bringing attention, that's why I think that the museum in Montgomery, Alabama is so important, because it just, it's not hidden anymore. Like, we can say, we can pretend things haven't happened, but there you can see every single lynching that they have heard about. They have a metal, basically coffin shaped
mm,
monument hanging with the names and the dates and where they were lynched.
mm,
And they also have a copy of each of those hanging monuments. They have them laying on the out perimeter of the museum for the place where the lynching happened to come and claim it and create a public monument in their town.
mm.
So it's this incredible, invitation. Come
Wow.
and don't hide from this.
Mm,
So I think part of it is really making it visible.
mm,
It really and that's why the whole book banning and the whole, let's get race, anything that makes our kids uncomfortable out of our curriculum. That's why that's so dangerous, right? Because
sure.
then already we don't
We've been
see
through
it,
this movie before.
you know. So like bringing attention to it with deep love. The thing that I find so powerful about the Montgomery Museum is it's not about blame, it's not about shame, it's
Mm,
about healing. Just like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I know there are lots of, it's not a perfect process, but healing happened there because attention was brought to the wound. And
mm,
those who were responsible were part of that.
mm,
They had to see the extreme suffering they caused. They had to
mm,
hear the victims' stories.
mm,
That was part of their healing, their redemption.
mm,
So the museum in Montgomery is for everyone. It's not to blame, it's to say this happened and this is how it happened. So if
mm,
we know how it happened, we know how not to let it happen again.
mm,
It's like everyone here, if you haven't been to that museum, please go, because
mm,
this is the kind of, like the Holocaust Museum in DC, like so many, we need a museum for what's happened in Palestine, not just a museum, but like people need to understand how these things have come to be, so that we can, see how to not repeat them, and what real healing looks like,
mm,
right? Like accountability has to happen,
mm,
like, a real a change of consciousness has to happen
mm,
for us not to keep repeating these things.
mm,
Mhm. But I think that's where ceremony can also be so powerful, is it's going through the back door rather than the front door.
mm,
It's not a logical thing, or it's not, you can't fight you can't fight that with your mind. You
mm,
can only, take it in on deeper levels of your consciousness. Like you said, it was just sitting in your store consciousness for some
mm,
time, right? Like if you could see, if people from a, say, Southern community were going to a ceremony where a lynching happened at a tree,
mm,
that's not something you can argue with,
mm,
right? Like that's just something you need to let your collective and your individual consciousness process and work with. And you know
mm.
but we won't, yeah, it won't happen through, I think healing won't happen if we if 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 everyone can't feel like they're really needed at the table.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
That's why I always want to call you Suji. I still think of you as Suji, my elder sister. But I'm so grateful because you've been a model your whole life of inclusiveness.
Mm,
I always remember the first POC retreats
mm,
in uh, um, in Deer Park, and I know for those of us, with European and
mm, yeah.
white, who present, I'm white. Um, it was really meaningful to be part of those. I mean, I know
Mm,
that I also understand not being there is that's
yeah,
fine, but it
yeah,
was, that inclusion,
yeah,
just to be able to listen, it was
yeah,
so, I think, impactful for us.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
who are white, to listen to
Mhm.
really, as we're practicing together, and
Yeah.
so. And I just, maybe I finished because I see we're I could go on like this for 2 hours.
I know. It's
Well, but
so great to talk
I
with
want
you.
to just say that I've really had this insight about, I mean, not just me, but I think that the retreats were just one way in which Thai was trying to transform violence in the collective consciousness, especially
Mm,
here in America.
mm,
He had, right, like he said, he had this feeling that the problems happening in the Vietnam War had to do with what was going on over here.
yeah.
And so sometimes in the Plum Village community, we can, not all of us, but some of us, we can kind of get just stuck in this routine. Okay, we've got these retreats on the schedule coming up next year, and maybe we have a new theme or topic or something like that. But and I often say, well, how can we look outside of this? It's not just about retreats. It's really it's a larger project that we're going on here as a transforming collective consciousness. So
Mhm.
I feel like you're doing that with your new center and your
Mm.
teaching, but I just give you that as a prompt to kind of close and how can we find new and unforeseen engaged ways to transform collective consciousness?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Um, you know, the joy is what's coming to my mind as one way to. I mean, I'm thinking of all the in COVID when all these people started recording their dancing to this South African song. Um, Now, if someone knows the name of the song, you can put it in the chat for me. I can't remember, but it was like so many different people learned this particular dance and recorded themselves during the pandemic.
Mm.
You know, airline stewardesses, kids in Hawaii, students in India, hospital staff in Germany. There was like, I think hundreds of these videos, maybe thousands. Um, and like it was such a moving thing for me to see people coming together in this very joyful way. Um, and it was like, really, we were one, everyone loving this music, figuring out these moves, like large groups of people doing it together. Um, and I think, yeah, Jerusalem, thank you, Whitney.
Mm.
Jerusalem was the South African song. Um, And I think if we can think of mass expressions of joy that help people feel connected, that help people feel like they're doing something meaningful and also fun, um, I think that's a piece of it. Because I think, you know, um, I know someone, a dear friend and practitioner in the Plum Village tradition who kind of has this mantra of like, it should be easy. Like, we often think to do important and big things, it's going to be hard or it should be hard. We even think it should be hard. But she switched that around for herself in a way that really shifted her approach to things. She's like, no, it should be easy. So I'm thinking, what would make changing collective consciousness easy? That dance was easy for people because it was so much fun and they were like so thrilled to be part of this sort of global movement of people dancing to this beautiful song and showing their connection to each other through the same movements, the same song. So I'm just thinking, I don't know exactly what it looks like or what it is, but it should have joy. It should be uplifting, inspiring, and I think it can be easy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if we have a few more moments. There are a couple questions that came up in the chat.
Sure.
Um, so uh, uh, maybe we can highlight. Queenie, would you like to ask a question directly, or would you like me to ask it? Okay, I'll add you in.
dear brothers and sisters, Winnie buying in. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah, I know all this, healings and work are really important. And I'm myself a Vietnamese, and my family, we have suffered a lot from the war. And I know Thay's teachings all came from his sufferings from the war. But I also feel that there are really urgent things that can be done in the Middle East right now. My husband is from the Middle East, and I feel that maybe it's wrong view, I don't know, from my part, but I feel that right now we can mobilize to do something right now rather than wait until the war in the Middle East or even in Ukraine. But I mean, really, for me, I see a direct responsibility of the American government or military, industry sending arms and allowing Israel to wage war in the Middle East. And I know it's very complex, very I'm not just trying that it's so simple, but and I know also that elections is very important for the American people right now. But I feel also there's really this emergency that there's war, there's fire in the Middle East, and nobody is really caring to stop it. And actually, I feel that the world is trying to speaking out, but as long as the US is still sending arms to Israel, this war is still going on. So as long as, it's important to mobilize for the elections, but isn't it also important to mobilize in the US to stop sending arms?
Yes.
Somehow making some pressure on Congress to stop sending arms to Israel. Somehow,
Yeah.
I feel that in a way, this war is kind of like the same as the Vietnam War, the US against Iran, but it's a proxy war, the same as it was a proxy war for us in Vietnam. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me. My question.
Thank you so much, Queenie. And I really hear the deep suffering in your question, and I share the just such pain at seeing what's happening and how we're funding so much of this, and not just funding, but like giving our weapons for this terrible genocide. And so absolutely, I think, this is a matter for this moment to really be doing whatever we can to say, no, I don't want this to happen in my name. And so, that's what I was speaking to when I was saying how this is a complex election for many. I mean, the choice, I think, is, well, for me, it's super clear, but it's also not without problems, because I think, well, what I appreciate Bill McKibben sharing is that, we elect the person who we think will do the most good, but then we push them once they're in office to really do more, I don't think, I think part of what could help is to get someone in office who can be pushed in the right direction. That's not a bad thing to do to help what's happening in Palestine, but it's just because, the, say, more progressive candidate gets elected doesn't mean our work is done. They still need to be pushed, but even, with or without the elections, what is happening is absolutely, I think, it has to stop. And I know the voices seem to be getting louder in this country, also at the level of our government, that this war has to end. And I join you in very much wanting the words to be backed up by action, and it's yeah, there's a lot of forces moving, in the other direction too. And so I think we absolutely need to do everything we can to express our demand that this war end, and that we not be, funding the murder of innocent people. I mean, what's happening is not in line with any kind of international, law, that all these civilians are being killed, slaughtered. So, yeah, thank you for your reflection. Yeah, and if folks have, links or things you want to put in the chat for ways to take action, please share, because I think that would be a great thing to come out of our gathering is, make a call. I know Buddhist Peace Fellowship, every Wednesday, they have a 30-minute sit and call your congresspeople to advocate for ending the war. So if nothing else, maybe you could join a Wednesday practice time with Buddhist Peace Fellowship.
Well, thank you so much, Sister Kaira Jewel, for taking all this time. To continuing to do the great work, not just the good work, the great work that you has put in motion. I feel very grateful. I know you're that, and I'm very happy.
Thank you
Please
so
come
much.
visit Deer Park soon, okay?
Yes, I would love to. And I'm so deeply grateful for you, brother, and all that you're doing, and all the monastics in Deer Park and all of our practice centers. We really love you and take refuge in you very much. So thank you for being there and doing what you're doing every single day.
Okay. Yeah, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.